Hi everyone, William here with the Grand Duke Dmitri Diary series on YouTube, and we haven't done a diary entry for a while actually because we're doing letters at the moment. We've got one today from January 1909. Every once in a while I like to sort of reintroduce myself. We've had some new subscribers, which is always thrilling for me, and yeah, so I have a PhD in Russian history from the School of Slavonic and East European Studies at the University of London, specifically at University College, the University of London. And I did my dissertation on the service role of the Romanov Grand Dukes, going all the way back to the beginning of the dynasty in 1613 and forward to 1917. The biggest part of my research and my dissertation at that time was on Alexander II's reign, the period of great reforms. So Dmitri and Nicholas II and that part of Russian history kind of just got squeezed in at the end, although importantly so. But since then, I have been really focused on Dmitri, as you know. So, yeah, in the process of translating his diaries into English and his correspondence. And these letters that we've been doing lately are privately held by the Bernadotte family. So they haven't been published. So this is a great opportunity to get them out there. All right, so our recap, last time we did the second half of the letter that Dmitri wrote to Maria on 12th March 1909, and he talked about Nicholas and Alexandra's upcoming tour that summer of Europe on the Standard. They went to England, they went to Sweden. I'm not sure where all they went. I am not an expert on them at all. Dmitri wanted to go along with them, but I don't believe that actually ended up happening. We'll find out as we continue to go through 1909. And then he had asked Maria to contribute money to buy, well, for each of them to buy a candlestick to be put in Grand Duke Sergei's memorial chapel. Okay, and the first half of that book we need to touch on because a lot of this letter today deals with an issue that had been resolved. So we're going back in time. That previous letter was 12th March, and I did it first just because it was already translated. This letter is from 19 January. So this is when the situation initially arises, and we found out in the letter of 12th March that Maria had successfully fulfilled Dmitri's request. All right, so here we go. This was written in Tsarskoye Selo. Dmitri doesn't say why, if he was staying there for the weekend, or yeah, I don't know, doesn't say. Okay, 19th January 1909. My dear Maria, I want to thank you and Vilgashka both so much for the wonderful buttons. I don't have any others like them yet, so they're very, very useful. Listen, Maria, I need to have a little talk with you, as they say, on a certain topic, namely, is the King of Sweden really so angry about not being allowed through the gates by the soldiers of the Combined Guards Regiment? I'm asking because everyone received Swedish medals, including the 2nd Rifle Battalion, the Honor Guard, and the platoon of the Life Guards Regiment, which was on guard, and the 4th Rifle Battalion. In short, everyone who had anything at all to do with Gustav was included, except the Combined Regiment. I'm sending you a little list of those men whom Komarov put together. He personally received a Swedish order, Dmitri puts in parentheses. At least ask on behalf of those who were on duty on the day of the wedding. The officers are terribly sad because they all love you tenderly. Moreover, I know from the order that in my battalion, around 40 men received medals, and Komarov's list only has around 15 men. Maria, darling, please intervene on their behalf. Blank won't be so blank, and we'll forgive them. After all, it's a little offensive that those who stood at the gates only once got medals, and those who were constantly in attendance on His Majesty did not. Maria Nikolaevna talked a great deal about your life, which is so interesting to me. She was in ecstasy about your hospitality, affectionateness, courtesy, and kindness. I sometimes go to party these days. Recently there was a party, well, more of a dinner at the Beligans. It was very nice and cozy. After all, she, blank, and Greek Alex. 3 or 4 days ago, I was blank, a young horse, and fell right on my back. It was quite unpleasant, but now, thank God, I'm perfectly fine. The weather is warm all the time, though inexplicably today it was suddenly 17 degrees. Now it's time to hug you and your husband, your Dmitri. P.S. You're such a sweetie! Exclamation point. Don't forget, my bubalechka, to ask about the combined regiment. Cross sign. I saw Nadyenka not long ago. She looks absolutely terrible. God forgive me. And then he puts a question mark for some reason. It's like he's saying, God forgive me, but then he puts a question mark and then the sign of the cross. Okay, so this is kind of a complicated one. It does need some taking apart, and maybe I didn't do the best reading of it. But let's start with buttons. Okay, so what kind of buttons? So, 19 January. So it's just right after the holiday season. New Year, Christmas. We know what Dmitri sent to Maria for Christmas, and to Wilhelm, he told us. And apparently what they sent to him were buttons. So what kind of buttons? He doesn't have any others like them yet, so they're very, very useful. I have in mind maybe that they were studs or something, buttons for civilian clothes. He went straight from sailor suits to uniforms. So he didn't have a lot of experience with civilian clothes, didn't probably have a lot of civilian clothes. So yeah, it's not a particularly fancy Christmas gift, if that's what it was, unless they were, like gem-studded buttons, but who knows. Anyway, so what is going on with the King of Sweden? Well, this was Gustav V, and he was Maria's father-in-law, and he had come to Russia in 1908 for the wedding of his son Wilhelm and Maria. And he was attended there, of course, by honor guards and by troops who were attached to him and officers. And apparently there had been some incident. I can only sort of put it together from what Dmitri says. There had been some incident where he had not been recognized, and he had been not been allowed to pass through a gate. And apparently it really, really offended him. So the offending body was at least a unit of the Combined Guards Regiment. So this was the Combined Guard Regiments had Guards Regiment existed in order to allow guardsmen and officers from regiments that were not usually on duty or headquartered in Tsarskoye Selo, to each of them get a chance to be there in Tsarskoye Selo, attending upon the emperor and the empress. And so it was not a regiment that had a permanent body of men and officers. I mean, maybe it had a skeleton, it must have had, but one that was sort of rotational. People would come from the various guards regiments and be there for a while. And, so there was some confusion. That's understandable. It wasn't their usual place to be. There was this mix-up with the King of Sweden. And as a result, apparently, if Dmitri understands things correctly, which he certainly seems to, everybody who had even the smallest part in the wedding attending upon Gustav was given either a medal for the soldiers or an order or a medal for the officers, except these men from the Combined Regiment. And so, yeah, that was distressing. That was, as Dmitri says, offensive. So he's pretty much begging his sister to do something about this. So that's interesting. The 2nd Guards Rifle Battalion, by the way, was Dmitri's. It was the one that he was the honorary commander of. The 4th Imperial Family Guards Rifle Battalion was Yeah, it had the whole imperial family as its sort of patron. The lifeguards, I'm not sure what regiment that was, but anyway, it's interesting the route this took. So it went from Komarov, who apparently was an officer in the Combined Guards Regiment, to Dmitri. So Komarov made this very modest little list with 15 names on it of people who should receive a medal or an order or acknowledgement of some kind. Dmitri notes that in his own battalion, 40 people got medals. And so this is quite a modest list that Komarov has come up with, around 15 people. So it goes from Komarov to Dmitri, and then from Dmitri to Maria. And so the burden is on Maria then to either, bring it to her husband or bring it directly to her father-in-law. And as I said, we know from the 12th March letter that she did so successfully. That could be a little scary, depending on what your father-in-law is like. He's very offended by this thing that happened, and you're asked to go and say, well, can you please overlook it? But I don't know. I know nothing at all about Gustav V. So some of you who do know more about him may laugh or may say, oh yeah, that was what he was like, or I don't know. Comment if you have an opinion about that. Okay, so now Maria Nikolaevna, the one who's talking a great deal about Dmitri's life. She is the wife of General Laming. So this is Maria Nikolaevna Laming. And if you'll remember, in one of the summer 1908 letters, there was this sort of competition, apparently, to see what lady was going to be able to go and visit Maria in Sweden. I don't know why they couldn't all go or at various times, but Maria Nikolaevna had just recovered from what was apparently a quite serious illness, and it was considered that this trip and this change of air and scenery would be good for her. Plus, she and her husband were like parents to Dmitri and Maria. Dmitri and Maria, the closest they had to a normal family life was spending their time in the apartment of Maria Nikolaevna and Georgy Mikhailovich Laming. So yeah, they were really like parents. So it's not surprising that Maria would want her to go, Maria Nikolaevna. And Maria was also pregnant and probably very welcome to have some affectionate female, more or less relation, like a mother. So that makes sense. And Maria Nikolaevna comes back and is just thrilled, obviously, with how affectionate Maria and her husband were and how well they treated her. Okay, Dmitri is 17, I will remind you, and he is now living in Petersburg. And so his life is completely different from what it was in Moscow when he was under the thumb of his aunt. And so he gets to go to some parties these days. That's nice. Recently to the Beligans, he tells us. It wasn't really a party. It was more of a dinner. It was nice and cozy. And then there's this inopportune moment where the name is, the words are illegible. The word is illegible. After all, she, and then I say blank because I can't make out whatever the next word is. And then she, probably the hostess, and then, and Greek Alex. So who is Greek Alex? The only Greek Alex I know of at that time was a young man of, I think, 15. He was Prince Alexander of Greek. And yeah, as I say, he was about 15 years old. He would later on be killed in this freakish incident where he was bitten by a monkey, and then the wound became septic, and he died within a very quick period of time. He would briefly be Alexander I of Greece, but would die from this monkey bite. Dmitri will talk about that later in his diaries. Right now, I don't know if this is the Greek Alex who is mentioned, but it seems like he's the best candidate. And the only thing that kind of makes me think that is, well, the Buligins had a son who was also a teenage boy. So Dmitri was 17, Alex was 15, and the Buligin son, Pavel Petrovich, was 13 or 14 at that time. So, yeah, was he there? I'm sure Greek Alex wasn't there, because Dmitri would have made that clear. But was this a teenage boys' dinner kind of a thing? Did the Buligins invite Dmitri because they had an adolescent son? I don't know, because 13-year-olds and 17-year-olds aren't usually at all on the same wavelength. I mean, 13-year-olds kind of still have one foot in the nursery, right? And Dmitri was 17 and going to the cavalry school. So I don't know. I'm just yammering a lot here because I know nothing, and it's speculation. Pavel Petrovich Buligin would end up being a good friend of Dmitri's, and someone that Dmitri talks about in his 1920-1921 diaries. Anyway, for what that's worth. So then we have this injury, the equestrian, he falls off a horse, or he falls, or the horse knocks him down or something. It's a young horse, and he falls on his back. He had quite a few, injuries over the years, minor injuries, but broken bones, that sort of thing, from falls off of horses. It's dangerous, sport, dangerous work, working with horses. Yeah, what do I know about that? Not much. Okay, 17 degrees, suddenly 17 degrees today, and what scale? I have no idea. And finally, this wonderful P.S. You're such a sweetie. You're such a sweetie pie, I think would be the best way to translate that, because it comes from a word that basically means a little sort of donut thing. So he's calling her, yeah, my little muffin, little sweetie pie. He's, I think, trying to make her laugh, but also sort of buttering her up, because he really wants this favor about these Swedish medals. And then, fascinating, he says, my bubulechka. So this has got to be, it's not a Russian word. It's got to be Yiddish. It's got to be from bubala. And where would Dmitri have heard Yiddish? Where would he have picked up this word? Well, my guess would be in a theater performance. He loved going to the theater. It's far in the future, but in 1915, he would talk about going to the Jewish theater at the front in Belarus, I think, was where the headquarters was. And yeah, he was, as we know, he was quite a character. He liked to make people laugh. He liked to make Maria laugh. So, it doesn't surprise me that he would take this Yiddish word, bubala, and adapt it to a Russian word, bubelechka, and apply it to his sister. Now, again, this is speculation. I could be wrong about that. If any of you, have other knowledge and say, well, wait a minute, no, this was a Swedish term of endearment. It has nothing to do with Yiddish. I don't know. But anyway, that's what it seems to be to me. Nadyenka, poor Nadyenka, she looks absolutely terrible. God forgive me. I don't know what to say about that. It's interesting that he uses the sign of the cross twice in this letter. Once after asking Maria not to forget this favor, he uses it. And then after the God forgive me, he uses it. I'm talking too long today, especially about horses. I can't tell you what the next one is going to be. I kind of did this on the fly. It will surely be another 1909 letter, and I hope to see you then. Bye.